Hello and welcome to another episode of A Sculpted Journey of Ireland. We've all driven past them, we've all admired them, and even criticised them. But how many of us know the stories behind them? This week I'm travelling to Middleton, County Cork, to find out more about a sculpture which has united two very different communities through hardship. This piece is known as Kindred Spirits, or perhaps better known locally as The Feathers. To tell me more, I met up with its sculptor, Alex Pentek.
Well, I suppose it really started with an open competition run by Cork City Council that was nationally and internationally advertised to reflect on the 1847 Choctaw donation to Ireland during the famine, Choctaw Native American Indians, that is. And so this is a donation of about $170, which was all they had at the time, and translates into a lot of money in today's money, and was one of the first ever international famine relief donations, historically noted. During the famine, there was mass emigration, and word was travelling very quickly. Even though there was no internet, word of mouth and letter and newspaper. It was decided at a meeting in Scullyville that they would do something about it, that they would put their resources together and send what they had, and they sent everything they had over to Ireland to try to save as many lives as possible.
13 years prior to the Irish famine, the Choctaw suffered their own devastation, called the Trail of Tears. The forced migration from their ancestral home in the Mississippi region to the area we know today as Oklahoma was part of an ethnic cleansing effort to remove the Indians. They were marched in severe weather and died in their thousands from starvation, cholera and exposure. The people who survived empathised with Ireland as one oppressed nation to another when they heard the plight of the Irish.
Even with all of that, I realised that actually some things are beyond my imagination, and I couldn't imagine, number one, the situation in Ireland, and number two, the horror of seeing your family members literally perishing next to you and being powerless to do anything about it. But the ideas I was thinking of were, firstly, that idea back to things being unimaginable, and that a literal representation of that history, number one, it's impossible, and number two, it would always be sort of crass in some way, or not really fitting, and would almost belittle the subject by trying to bracket it into one image. So I realized that my approach would have to be symbolic in some way. And so I looked at the form of an empty bowl, symbolic of the million who perished here in Ireland in the Great Hunger and the Famine. And also then I looked at round-tipped eagle feathers that are used in Choctaw ceremonial dress. And so by making a fusion of these ideas and images, I was able to sort of put them together to come up with the idea.
When people come along here just to take a look at your sculpture, what do you hope they see? What do you hope they take away from it?
So, I mean, this is my response to quite a very specific history and a story. I also think that, or it's my hope, that an artwork would have a life of its own, and that it would be reinterpreted anew by each person who sees it. And I definitely wouldn't feel, even as an artist, qualified to judge or to tell someone that wasn't what I was thinking. I would say that each reinterpretation of a work is automatically valid by the person who's looking at it. So I would respect that. And it would be my hope that the work could go on to have other new meanings and new interpretations. There's over 20,000 wells in the entire piece, and that took over a year to complete. The piece is standing 6 meters by 6 meters, and I couldn't pin it down to the factory floor to actually erect it all, to see all the elements in place. So it was only until we started actually bolting it to the foundations one by one that I could start to see how it would take shape and if it worked or not. And as we put each feather down, working with the team, I got more and more excited. And at that point, a couple who happened to be from Oklahoma came and asked to take some images, photos, and they did and shared them online. And it went the rounds on social media until I got contacted by Chief Gary Batten's office of the Choctaw Nation, First Nation American Indians, thanking me for remembering our shared history. And so it sort of grew legs really from the very start. Even before it had actually been properly installed, it had been shared and had kind of taken its own life. So not every work that I would make would have that sort of popularity. And actually at the ceremonial launch, where Chief Gary Batten was invited with other council members to come and be part of the ceremony, which was amazing to see and to meet him and all the fellow tribe members. He said something at the launch which really made me sort of think of this very question. And so he said that yes, it reflects the history, and yes, it responds to our shared heritage, this sort of the native Choctaw bonds, but that also it speaks to humanity and standing together against adversity, and that's a message that continues on into the future to have as much meaning today as it did back then.
Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. I thoroughly enjoyed learning not just about this beautiful work of art, but also about our history. If your travels allow you to pay this sculpture a visit, then please take a moment to appreciate what the Choctaw and the Irish both suffered, and only then celebrate this momentous symbol of gratitude. Once again, thanks for tuning into A Sculpted Journey of Ireland.